So this is Peekaboo. It's been a week. I'm just challenged Peekaboo's worms to eat through the shredded paper marathon that we had. These are the worms that came out of my leaf mold only worm bin. So it was interesting, somebody commented on my last video how colorful these worms are. I'm wondering how long they're going to retain their lovely vibrant color from that leaf mold. Here's the moldy avocado still with worms on it. Well, it's not molding fast enough. It's still retaining this bright green color, and until it molds, the worms won't be able to eat it. But there are still worms interested because they know it's got the potential to mold. So let's just take a look. So the worm color, they're definitely red worms, and they're beautiful, beautiful deep red. I guess I turned him upside down when I put him down. But yeah, these are the worms that came from a bin that was only ever fed leaf mold. Now they are in a bin that is only getting cardboard. So the interesting thing is, are these worms going to revert in pigment back to a paler color of red after living in this? They both get fed my food scraps, same bin. So even though the worms were living in leaf mold only, it was leaf mold only bedding. And these worms are now getting cardboard only bedding. I do have leaves here that I've been feeding Eat My Shorts, but I thought it would be a neat experiment to watch the evolution of this group of worms to see whether their color has a rapid switch back to being more what I would say a typical red worm color instead of that intense crimson that I was seeing with the leaf mold bedding. So this bin, you can see how light and fluffy the castings are. So not excess moisture, despite that water accumulating on top of the Amazon packaging. I'm not seeing a lot of excess water once I get down into the bin. This avocado pit has opened. In fact, I think the worms have already got into it. It seemed empty. So let me just turn over these last two corners. The dry paper in the corners, that's typical when you don't have a lid on a bin. I just did a video on Eat My Shorts and how running a bin without a lid on it is something that suits the way I manage my worms better than having a lid. Peekaboo actually was the site of my infamous jailbreak. I'll put the link in the description to that video where, you know, inadvertently I had placed the lid on top because quite honestly, I like to store things on top of the lid. I'd placed the lid ajar on the top of this bin, and inadvertently the lid got closed. I think it was a day and a half, 2 days later, before I realized the lid had no air holes in it, no venting holes. And so when I realized the lid was closed, I went, oh my goodness. And I opened it and there were like 1,000 worms on all the walls. So if you haven't seen my jailbreak video, please go look at it and see that I caught that disaster just in the nick of time. All right, so, you know, from what I'm seeing, this is a bin that is running just beautifully, and it looks hungry to me. I think we finally reached the end of all the white office paper that I was shredding. So that's good because that was a marathon shred, and we have white office paper not only in most of my worm bins, but also out in our shrub borders. We had to get rid of a lot of white office paper, and so it is dotted around everywhere. So I'm back to basically just cardboard now. And so how I will make that cardboard nice and wet is the feeding that I took out of the freezer. Like most frozen food scraps that you have, especially if you pulverize them ahead of time like I do, they have accumulating juice on the bottom. So I'm just going to gently try to come down here and pour out the juice. I can actually just lean it on an angle like this, and the juice will just all run to the one end of the container, and that will give it a little bit more. Actually, I've got a thought here. I will be right back. All right, I have some carrot juice that has gone past its prime date, and even though it looks perfectly good, it's only got one ingredient, carrot. So we don't want to risk eating it ourselves. So I thought I would just give the worms, there you go, pour in some liquid right from that carrot juice. I was wondering, what worm bin do I have that's dry enough to pour straight juice into it? I'm also doing another video where I show that you can use your garden towers to absorb excess moisture that you may have in the food that you put aside. So I'll put the link to that video as well in the description. So now I guess all I have to do is feed. So I'll just take a chunk of this food and I'll just put it right in. I can now remove this bin entirely. And so I'll just spread out these food scraps on top of that carrot juice. I think that's going to be moist enough, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that packing paper that was on the top of the bin, and I'm just going to put it right in the feeding zone. You see it's already damp, but this will further inoculate it with the microbes that are attracted to this food. And so this paper now will become part of the active bedding of the bin rather than just being a light barrier on the top. So now what I'll do is I will just take this beautiful dry vermicompost from around the edges, drying, put the avocado back in the corner. It's a beautiful siftable moisture level, but I don't want to sift this bin. I want to let it ride a little bit longer before I harvest it. So I want the moisture to build up again. Moisture is needed to hatch out those cocoons and encourage breeding. So I don't want this bin to dry at the moment. So that's why I've added the carrot juice in addition to the juices from the feeding. And that's it for us watching Peekaboo's lovely crimson worms. And they're going to get into carrot juice. And I wonder if the pigment from the carrot juice is going to ignite those worms in a vibrant color again. That'll be interesting. Will they go orangey? Who knows? All right. Bye, everyone.